few of you I haven't had a chance really to talk with, and I'm hoping that today we will. And for anybody else that's watching, I'm Roy Ramey, and I'm from West by God, Virginia. Yep, you got to have the by God in there because it's not Western Virginia, it's West by God, Virginia. So, 17 years ago, I was working construction and military. I kind of was a glutton for punishment, and I was looking for a farm, and I managed to find it. Me and my wife moved on to this ragged, rugged piece of land that really had been overgrown and left in neglect for a lot of years. And it's like, what can we do with this thing? And our plan was to run livestock, except we couldn't do cattle, so we did mostly small livestock, pigs, chickens, rabbits, quail, things like that. And we did a little bit of planting, but that really wasn't the big thing for me. But we had a lot of woodland, and I'd asked for many years, what can I do with this rugged piece of land? Uh, how much land? 37 acres. And so the vast majority of that was wooded, steep hillside. It was nothing like what you would get to farm. And I thought, what can we do with that? And I've been asking myself that question for a long time. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. What can you do with that? And I bet many of you might have some rugged piece of land that's not prime, tillable soil in central Indiana that you can, run 1,000 acres with corn and spray Roundup. That's probably not what we're doing in this crowd anyway. But what can you do with a rugged piece of land? And your land might not be exactly like mine, but you might have something similar. And hopefully this will inspire some ideas. This is not a be all, end all, do it this way. It's to inspire some ideas on what's possible out there. How can you extend your own operations, look long term, and be able to maybe generate some extra income and some medicinal and food value in some plantings. And that's kind of where I went with it. It took a long time to answer that question. What can I do with this land? A few years ago, I started getting into forest farming. There was some workshops that was offered in my area. And actually before that, even I had learned about mushrooms a little bit. So I'm not an expert on mushrooms, but that was a part of my starting of learning. And then I got brought into ginseng, yellow root. By the way, I'm going to use the term yellow root and golden seal interchangeably. There's other plants that are known as yellow root. Those aren't the plants I'm talking about. If you hear me say yellow root, I'm talking about golden seal. So I'll use that term interchangeably. There's bloodroot. There's comfrey. Of course, many of us are already familiar with comfrey. There's maple syrup. And so these things are kind of the foundation of a forest farming operation. And I'm going to introduce you to some of those things. In my case, I'm in West Virginia, the middle of Appalachia, and we are in the heart of forest farming country. If you live anywhere who lives in Appalachia anywhere? Okay, close. And that extends out into the Ozarks. But some of this stuff extends beyond Appalachia. So the northern United States, when we talk about maple syrup and ramps, that's beyond Appalachia. If you have some microclimates in your area that's not in that zone, you might be able to do some of this stuff too. And there's probably other things that you could do, even if it's not the 5 or 6 things I'm going to talk about here today. But the goal is to help generate some extra income, provide some of your own medicine and food. You can help restore your land. These are ancient plants. These are foundational woodland plants, and they're in decline. So by you propagating these things, you're going to help, take them out of decline and get them into the marketplace, get them into use. Some of the positives is that you can generate that income. Building soil. We were talking this morning about soil. I won't get into a whole lot about soil, but I will cover a little bit of the soil conditions. But you can help build that soil. Some of the negatives in this is these plants are slow growing. And particularly when you talk about the maple end, you're talking about a maple tree. It takes many years to get a maple tree up to production size. When you're talking about ginseng, it's many years to get that to a harvestable size or even a mature reproductive size. There's some knowledge that's required in this. It's not just your typical plant a corn seed in the ground and watch it grow. There's some knowledge with this that will help you, like any kind of farming, though. Access to land is another one. So, we mentioned the nice, beautiful piece of land in Indiana that most of us don't have. Might be, I think there's a couple of you from Indiana there, so maybe you have that. I'm sorry? Not yet. As you were, Jake. But the land access, is real, so you may or may not have that. But can you do some guerrilla gardening? We've talked about that, and as a permaculture technique, if you don't have your own land, but you know somebody else that does, can you use their land? So that's a possibility as well. And this is long-term reward, and it takes a lot of labor. This is not an easy pursuit, but I'm big into perennials. I don't mind putting a lot of work into something once, or, with a little bit of getting it along, and then Mother Nature is perfect. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but Mother Nature is perfect, and it knows how to take care of itself. So if you put some right things in place, get at the seed, get at the water to start with, then you can kind of walk away and come back in a few years and make your harvest. So that's real attractive to me, that it's not constant, digging, hoeing, weeding. You can put some of that into it, but that's not an attraction to me. And so I don't do that with forest farming. Most of us don't. So you can do a lot of things one time and you're done. But there is a lot of labor involved in it, nevertheless. And I don't want to wave a magic wand over and make you think that it's easy, because it's not. Mention that nature is the perfect teacher. So the forest has a lot of things in nature that we're not already into. We don't live in the forest. Most of us don't. We live somewhere else, and we might see our surroundings. But if you go into the forest, you see a lot more nature, because we're not there to screw it up most of the time. So there's more nature there, and that's the observation that you look at. Look at the orientation of trees and other plants, how they fit within the canopy or the rhizome layer, and all those principles of permaculture. So look at nature as that model and what grows there naturally, or what could grow there based on where you've seen it in another environment. And this environment is very similar with the characteristics of the orientation, the slope, the amount of moisture, the type of trees, the other pointer plants. We're going to talk about pointer plants in a minute. There's other things that are indicators there. And you should be thinking, oh, that's the same kind of characteristic I've got. Maybe I can plant some of these things. Maybe I can work it into my operation. So look at nature. What you're looking for in forest farming is typically a good north face slope. Now, this isn't 100%. There's certainly microclimates that extend these characteristics, but typically you're looking for a north slope, something that's 20 to 60 degrees is not crazy for this. You're not running tractors on it, so it's not like you have to be good level land. You're walking on this for the most part. This is manual type stuff. You can use small equipment in the woods, but it's not like you're pulling your tractor through, and you need good slopes. So that rugged, hilly land. You want something more with hardwoods, but more particularly maples. Maples are a good indicator tree. You can find some of this stuff in oak forests, but oak has a harder leaf, and it doesn't want to break down as well. So when you got these fragile plants trying to poke up through in the spring, the maple leaf is soft and will break down and just gets crumbly in a short period of time. The oak leaf does not. So it has a harder time. Plus the tannins affect the soil in a way that they really don't like that. But I have seen people growing ginseng and golden seal both under oaks. But it took extra management and extra labor to make that happen. Since I'm not into the extra labor and, being a glutton for punishment, then, I don't want to do that kind of a thing. I'm going to look for the conditions that are already right. If you find plants such as, we'll start with the big daddy, ginseng. You find ginseng already there. You find golden seal already there, bloodroot, ferns, wild yam, those kinds of things. That's an indicator that the other ones should probably work in that environment. Maybe they just haven't popped up yet and you're at a different season. And if you come back at a different time, you might find those plants. Otherwise, if you don't have them at all, those are indicators that you've got the right kind of soil, and those are going to work together. So if you don't have the big daddy of ginseng, but you've got all these other indicators, then you could probably put ginseng in there and grow it, because it's the same kind of soil that they all like. We talk about companion planting in a traditional garden. That's kind of like companion planting in nature. So those are the indicators that you're looking for. Now let's move on to some of the medicinal herbs. And I'm going to cover a few herbal plants. I'm going to talk about maple and a little bit about mushroom. So some of the medicinal herbs, the big daddy is ginseng. And there's a nice big, wonderful ginseng there with berry on it. And that came from my local community there. So beautiful plant, great example of what we have. Show some others. There's a ginseng patch. So that's what you can be looking for in an intensely managed spot. Now, when you go just foraging, typically you go through the woods and you stumble along and you find a ginseng plant. And you might walk a half a mile through the woods to find another ginseng plant. Now, ginseng is highly desirable. Why? Because it's worth a lot of money. People pay big money for it. Yeah, I like money too. So, you're looking anywhere from $100 to $800 a pound typically for ginseng. And that's a huge range, I know, but there's a lot of things it depends on the quality of that root. How early is it in the season? If you're one of the first diggers that get it in, then you're going to get a higher price. If it's good quality, you're going to get a higher price. Then they'll separate them out and go into different characteristics of nice roots. So if you have really nice roots, you might get $5,000 for a single root. Now, those are very rare. Those are big daddy roots. But instead of just wandering through the woods and trying to find this, and many people have their favorite patches, what you can be doing is looking at these characteristics that we've talked about and propagate this yourself. Notice that nice big berry right there in the middle. That's the seed head. And what you should be looking for when you're harvesting these is that seed head, and then propagate that back. Now, there's things in the woods that love these seeds, rodents especially, and they'll come dig them up even after you've planted them down. So they have a rare chance of propagating, but the more that you do, the more you're increasing that chance. Now, some other things that are hazards there. You notice the tangle of branches, particularly in this picture on the right. One of the other things out there is deer that love these, and they'll come and graze them off, and then you won't even know there's any ginseng there, even though the root's still in the ground. And it can handle doing that for a few years. It's got enough energy to keep that up and come back, but you won't necessarily know it's there then. So if you can put tangle in there of some sort, and another method is fence. I'll show you some pictures of fencing here in a little bit. Then you can keep the predators out that are looking, or scavengers that are looking to graze your plants. So, but this is very intensely planted, and you're looking at about 1 foot to 1.5 foot is the closest you want to get with these when you're propagating. So just imagine a garden. Instead of walking a half a mile to find the next plant, you walk 1.5 foot to find the next plant. And these will all grow together. Some of the others will grow closer. These don't. And it's also best, you'll notice in some of these photos, there's multiple things growing together. It's not like your traditional garden where you keep all the other plants and weeds out from each other. These companions grow together. You see in here, there's a fern, and there's some other plants here and there. You're not trying to knock those out. You want them to grow together. So there's a bed of ginseng where it's actually looks like a raised bed. Many of us are familiar with that, where you take the nice soils and you build them up in a nice area. What this does also will keep out some of the moles and voles. They want to dig through, and you're putting a barrier up from them getting to it. They're not going to go deep typically to go under, but okay. So those are some of the things that you're looking at with planting. And what I've seen some guys do, and I haven't done this yet myself, is they'll have specifically planting beds for seeding, and then they'll transplant. One of the things that that's hard to do is with ginseng is transplanting it. You end up damaging the roots in some way or another, as minor as the damage is, and then you won't necessarily get the good root characteristic and growth, or it'll take much longer for it to repair. So I like to plant things right where they're at, where they're going to live the rest of their life, and keep it there. That's a good question. So you're describing it like a carrot, and what we don't want in ginseng is to look like a carrot. Now there are propagated beds that are grown very intensely, and their roots look just about like a carrot. Those are very low grade. They don't have a lot of medicinal value to them, and therefore they don't have much economic value. There's not a big demand. There is still a demand for it. So if you got roots that aren't characteristic, then you still get a demand. But what you're looking for, they call it the old man or something that kind of looks decrepit, and it's got all of its limbs, going in different directions and kind of broken up. And you'll see a stressed piece. Let's move on to, so here's one that's stressed. And if you'll notice, right in here, this is the neck of it. And there's several rings in here. Those are the growth rings, and it's been highly stressed these last few years. So it grew nice and big here, and this isn't the most desirable. That's kind of a mid-grade-ish root, but what you're looking for is something that has more legs going around and looks bent and twisted up, and then the tough neck there, and actually the stress there will build more medicine value into it, and that's what a lot of folks that are looking for this, and mostly it's an Asian market, by the way. So they're looking for those highly stressed roots, and they'll pay more money for that. So that's kind of a mid-grade daddy here of what you're looking for. If you can stress them in a more natural, and that's the other thing is if they're in natural soil, they'll grow better and more of these characteristics. If you go in and till the land like you do a traditional garden, then you're going to get that carrot effect. You're going to get big fat roots, straight, nothing characteristic, and they're not going to be as desirable. So there's some beds in the woods. So this is a typical what you might be looking for with farming the forest. You're building beds in the woods in the natural environment where those plants grow. If you just walk out here, you wouldn't necessarily notice anything different about the types of plants that are here. They're just under the canopy. What you've done is concentrated them into beds that make it a little easier for you to work than just wandering through the woods and foraging. You put them in a place that you want, but you mimicked the conditions that they naturally grow. So there's some ginseng in here. There's some golden seal. There's some indicator plants like ferns and all. So all of that is stuff you would naturally see in a normal thriving woods like this. Here's another spot. Now this has got a little bit of a grass bed in there. Typically we think of ginseng and all these other plants have to be in a real dark forest. That's not necessarily true. I've seen there's a plant demonstration site for all this about an hour from my place. They've got a spot that's about 12 foot wide, interplanted with oak trees that I said, is not the ideal condition. And they've got a field on each side of this. So they got a very narrow canopy in there, and they've got both ginseng and golden seal growing in there, and they're doing very well, but they have to do a little bit of maintenance in there. So that's all the sun they're getting. It's less sun than we traditionally normally think. But those are just lined up right there on a walking path, and they're very easy to get to. They're raised beds. You're keeping out your moles and voles, and there's actually fence around there, and there is a good deer fence. So if you notice this line right through here, it's not a real heavy duty. So it's a lighter weight fence. It's more of a psychological barrier to keep those deer out. That's probably the most expensive component, by the way, if you use fencing. There's other ways that you can do it. We talked about the tangle brush to just, stack that on up. And that kind of is a deterrent. It doesn't totally keep them out, but it really knocks them back. That doesn't cost anything. If you go cut down some trees or cut up some trees that are dead, branches and so forth, then they'll do you well and don't cost a whole lot. Moving into some golden seal now. Oh, by the way, ginseng, if you buy the seeds, you're looking at around $40 for a pound. So that's kind of a general guide. It'll be plus or minus a few dollars each way, but that's quite a bit of seed. And you get 500 seeds in an ounce. So multiply that times 16. That's quite a bit of seed. And when you're looking at a foot to foot and a half spacing, you would want 1 plant per square foot, and not all of those are going to come up, but that gives them enough space. The problem with ginseng is if you plant them, if you plant them too close, then they end up getting disease. Some of the other plants that I'm going to talk about are better at close interval, but these get a lot of disease and they'll die out naturally. So just give them a little bit of space. But with the golden seal, they do thrive in these shaded beds, and they will be planted a lot closer together. And I'm going to show you just how close some of these are here in a minute. This is an example of an important component of free child labor. So I mentioned the labor component. By the way, this is also everything's dual purpose or multiple purpose. This is also homeschooling. So there was my daughter this spring when we were starting a new bed right there on one of our properties. So with golden seal, it's a little bit different of a plant shape. You got the rhizome there at the bottom, and it grows more horizontally, whereas the ginseng grows down. You have a lot of fiber hair roots that grow off of it, and the stem and the leaves are actually desirable to use. So the main constituent that people want is the rhizomes. However, there's a lot of good value to the stems. So when you're getting going and you've got small rhizomes that you don't want to harvest out, you're looking at about 3 years before you get a harvestable crop out of there. There's a way that you can get some of that. Number one, take some of the more mature roots if you'd like. I personally would want to keep those and drag it out for a few more years and make them more mature and just use the tops. So that's becoming more popular, and you can do like teas and so forth with that. And then you're not damaging the rhizome, and you're leaving that in the ground to grow more. You notice the nodes on here. There's a bud. And when you get a longer rhizome, you'll get more of these buds. You can break that apart. So, when you're in the early spring, you dig these up and you look at, I've got 3 buds on here. You can break those apart and separate them. And now you got 3 plants instead of 1. And they'll actually grow better even though you broke them apart. So that's an important way of expanding and extending. So when you first buy your ginseng, rhizomes is typically how you get those. You can get it in seed or rhizomes. You get about 80 good rhizomes per pound, and you're looking at about $40 a pound to buy that. So that's a kind of a typical average price. And so that's a way to extend it. And when you have multiple buds on there, you can break those apart and you really end up having more plants. And instead of buying more plants as you grow in continuing seasons, then you break them apart and extend your own. The fiber roots are also a good way to propagate this. Let me show you this is what these roots look like here on the right. And you see some of these buds in there, but you got all these little hair roots, and you're not seeing them in a picture here. You got to really look close, and sometimes you still don't see them. There'll be little nodules on those hair roots, and those will grow. They take much longer. But when you went out and dug up a whole patch, and they just really discovered this recently, settlers would go out and dig up a whole patch because they just weren't concerned with conservation. And it's like, how did that ever come back? Because those patches did come back. And it's because what they believe is those nodules were still there and it took longer. But so the point with that is, and with many of these other plants, are you use those hair roots and you can continue to propagate and grow while you're using the bigger rhizomes for something else or just as a mature extension. So there's a value to those. And then there you got more of the beds there on the left. This is a golden seal. So you got the rhizome roots on the right and a patch there on the left. And golden seal, by the way, is probably the second most valued of the forest farming crops. And I forgot to mention with ginseng, there's a lot of regulations on it with planting season, with harvesting season, sometimes how much you can harvest, how much you can hold in a day, and so forth. It's kind of, well, it's generally covered under DNR, like game regulations, and but the other plants don't have that. So I'm more attracted to the golden seal, which we just talked about, because there's not regulations on it. It's not as high of a price by a long shot, but I'm attracted to the no regulation part. There's regulations on it because it's a high demand plant and people have over harvested for a lot of years. And that's why you have to walk a half a mile to find the next plant. Well, and I'm making arguments that if it's private property and I have grown it, I don't have to have any regulations on growing corn or tomatoes or anything that I put in the ground that's mine. So I shouldn't have to. So I'm working on an effort in West Virginia to change that law. You'll have to do that in your own states. But my argument is if it's on your property and you've done the propagation on it, it's your plant. It might not be a good idea, but if you want to go harvest all of it and totally rip it out of the ground, that's your business. So now in the public forests and all right, maybe go control those. And I don't have much of a say in it other than as one of 2 million people in the public there. There are federal regulations, but in our case, that's state regulations in West Virginia. And I don't know what, every state has their own sets of regulations, so I couldn't address too many of the others. How do they know if you shoot a deer illegally or go fishing illegally or, anything else? So you got game wardens running around, and they're the other thing is you have to be licensed as a buyer for ginseng. So that's all heavily controlled, and those guys get inspected and all that. But moving on to these other plants that that are not as highly regulated or regulated at all. Now we've got another one called black cohosh. This is another medicinal plant. It's fairly easy to grow. This will get real tall, 6-7 feet with the seed stem. And then there is a patch of it. Again, you see that deer fence in the background. So this is kind of what it looks like. You're starting to see the pattern of farming in the forest. This isn't just a random plant here or there. This is deliberate plantings. And you notice also it's not totally side by side like you'd manage a garden. Nature has its own plan and you work with it, but sometimes you lose plants and you got a hole in there, and that's okay. You plant enough to overdo it, and now you got plenty to harvest. Typically what you're looking for is the rhizome on this. These are not very high priced plants. If you go to buy them, they are. If you're buying them to plant, but when you're going to sell them, they're not. So this is a plant that people want. When you look at your brokers that are buying it, they want these other plants. They're just not going to pay you a lot. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll offer you more money on the ginseng, but they'll tell you, you have to bring me this many pounds of black cohosh at a low price. And so you have to dig that. Or if you don't, then they're going to give you a low price on your ginseng. So there's a little shenanigans in there to promote people bringing this in. But I don't, but some people are.
We oftentimes use both of those together in medicinal.
Okay.
The black and the blue for certain things go together. It's important that they go together.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, there's certainly a lot on the, and I'm not an herbalist. I know some things about herbalism, but yeah, that's good to know. And I'm learning bits and pieces. I'm sorry. Oh, so the question was if I was doing blue cohosh as well, and his response back was medicinally, the blue cohosh and the black cohosh are used together as a medicinal for the effect that you're trying to get. Is that about it?
Yeah. We'll just say that when we're doing midwifery, the blue and the black are used together, and it's important that they go together in that particular application. So that's why I was curious. We make tinctures of both. They go together. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was just saying that they go together, and when you, in certain applications, in traditional Western herbalism, they are used as a pair, and the reason is that the black by itself needs to be balanced by the blue for certain metabolic reasons. So won't get into it too much, but they also tend to grow fairly close together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's good to know, and I'll take that feedback and start building that into my operation as well. There's more people that are interested in the black cohosh, so that's kind of what I've focused on. But and that's what I had available to get in my beds going. But I'll look into the blue more too. So thank you. Some more beds there. You can notice the distinct paths. You know, it's easier to walk through there. It's probably from compaction. So your soil consistency is a little different in there. And there's some more. Now, that brings us on to another one of wild ramps. Most of what we've talked about is medicinal plants. Ramps do have a medicinal value. They're similar to an onion or a garlic, but they're inedible. And I'm sorry?
I just happen to know German word for that.
Oh, okay. So these are more edible. This gets into the desirable edible foods, and you don't have to eat this in any limited amount. Although it's probably a good idea to limit the amount you eat. One of the things that I hear people talk about is during Ramp Fest, which is around April in West Virginia. People will just go eat platefuls of cooked ramps, and how bad it smells. Their body smells after that. And it's like, would you ever go eat a plateful of cooked onions or a plateful of cooked garlic? Okay, well, we know where you go. So, no, I don't. I like to eat it with my other foods. I like to use it to season other foods. So my method is using ramps as a flavoring in other foods, to include not just the bulb, which is the most desirable part, but the leaves. Dry those out, crumble them up, and you can use them as just like you'd shake salt or basil or any other kind of herbal flavoring. Notice a nice big patch there. That's really not a big patch. I've got a neighbor who's he's 80, roughly mid 80s or so, and he talks about his dad when he was a young man went up into the mountains of West Virginia and would dig ramps and bring them back to their farm. This is where I got started with the ramps several years ago. When I would go dig on him, I would take some of those and put on my farm and try to get them propagated as well. Well, his dad did this for several years, and now you go across his forest looking at the floor in April-ish, and the entire forest floor is covered in ramps. Covered, like you don't see anything else other than the trees coming up. So it's like, that's amazing. You just think, oh, well, this will be what my place looks like in a few years. It does not. So it's very, very hard. One of the things that I did learn about ramps, though, is the seed heads. So got a seed head right here. These propagate from the bulbs as well as seeds. Now, in nature, the seeds don't propagate as easily. You get about a 10%, 5 to 10% germination rate if you just let the seeds, and there's maybe 20 seeds in that head, maybe a little more. So 5 to 10% is going to germinate and come back up. However, if you go find those seed heads, and they're tiny, but if you find those seed heads in your patches and go propagate them deliberately, then you're going to get about an 80 to 90% germination rate. just by getting them in direct contact with the soil. They don't need to be deep. You're looking at about 1/4 of an inch of cover. You can rake back a little bit of a spot with your dry leaves on top and kind of rough up the soil, scatter your seeds and rough that back and kind of tamp, cover it back over with leaves, and you're going to get about it's reasonable to expect 80% germination. Some guys are saying a little higher than that. So if you want to really germinate, you need to manually do that and make use of these seeds. And it's very reminiscent of a banana. Some people call it a banana custard, and it doesn't store well. So it's one of those things of you need to get it, harvest it, use it. What some people do when they're not eating it fresh is they'll peel the skin off and take the seeds out and freeze it, and then use it later in dishes, mostly desserts. Make bread just like you'd make banana bread. You make pawpaw bread. You can make it in pie, ice cream, other desserts and dishes. So, and that's kind of an understory tree, but that doesn't mean you start it in the shade. So if you can get on an edge where you've got dappled sun shade mix, where it gets enough sun to start with, then those starter trees will get a better start. If you go out in the middle of the woods and try to grow these, you'll be struggling for years trying to get them up to a mature size.
It's a great niche product.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and it's coming back. Part of the reason why you don't hear much about it is it doesn't store well, it doesn't ship well, so people don't do it that are in that. So if you want it and you're in that particularly a close area, you can sell it to people close. You're not shipping it across the country though.
It's our largest native fruit.
Yeah.
And it's great, but nobody's been able to commercialize it because of that. And so it's a great local product when it's in season. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Now, to the point of commercialization, there is a company that's in Southern Ohio, Athens, Ohio, that is doing it commercial, but a small scale commercial. It's kind of in the region, and mainly what they're doing is they're freezing the pulp. So that's how they're keeping up with it. And then they make some dishes and sell at local festivals and all, but they're actually selling it in a pail, and then you can use it anytime throughout the year. Bonus one here, I won't talk a whole lot about it so we can move on, is bloodroot. But there's a plant and you can see it grows in a patch just like some of the other patches that you've seen there. Moving on to maple. So many of you have the image of a traditional bucket hanging on a spile on a maple tree, old style. And well, we use modern technology now. And that modern technology consists of tubing, vacuum tubing, where you can use either natural or mechanical vacuum. And you can still do it old style, by the way. So there's nothing to stop you until you do it for a couple of years and you realize this labor is too much shit and I ain't doing it. So ask me how I know. By the way, when I started maple, I never intended to stay with buckets. It was kind of a sampling to begin with to see how much sap am I going to get. My first year experimenting, and I went to tubing the next year because I knew that's what I wanted to go to anyway, and that was a natural progression up. This first one here is kind of a version of the bucket hanging on a tree. You've got a bucket sitting on the ground with two trees close by and tubing coming into that bucket. So you have one collection vessel instead of one hanging on each tree. Here is tubing directly into the tree and continuing on. I don't know if some of you in the back especially might not be able to see that, but you got this tube here in the foreground and then more tubes going around these other trees. And there's another little one going in as a tap. There's one as a tap on that tree. So what you're doing is you're basically wiggling this tubing down, and ideally, like on my place, it's fantastic because I got 500 feet of elevation and my house is at the bottom of the property. So all of the stuff comes downhill. Shit rolls downhill. Well, in this case, sap rolls downhill too. And I don't have to use mechanical in that system. So I'm pretty fortunate. I know other guys that some of my mentors who taught me to start with. Their house is up on the top of the hill, and it's all going down, and then they have to pump it back up, or they would have to go with the manual collection tank and siphon it over and then bring it up and cook it off. So this here brings it down to a good collection, something like an IBC tote. Now they have nice commercial stainless steel, thousands of dollars, but this is an inexpensive way. I've just used 55-gallon barrels with the tubing coming into it. Works fine. And then you take it off of there and move it into a cooking vessel. This is a very primitive one. Matter of fact, me and my brother-in-law used one almost identical to this. We just had 3 pans in it for a first-year trial, and that is very manual, labor-intensive. Takes a lot of time. The cooking and maple syrup, the evaporating, what you're doing is you're just evaporating the water off, and you're concentrating the sugars that's in there. Naturally, there's about 0.5% to 2% sugar in the sap that comes out of the trees, depending on the type of maple tree it is. Sugar maples are your best, and you're going to get about a 2%. On average, you get about 1%. So you're evaporating all that water off to concentrate it down to 66% is what your target is. So when you get it down to 66%, that's what it'll look like, as your finished product. And typically you're getting it down to about 62, 63% in an outdoor setting, because you've got lots of steam going off. Don't do this indoors. But then you can take it indoors to finish it, to get it right to that precise 66%. If you go over, you can end up having some scorching, and it thickens up too much, and you get it like heavy sugar crystalline in there. But 66 is your target that you're trying to stay out. When you move up a little bit, you might move up to a evaporator like this. This is still wood fired, and you got different chambers in there that it's going to go through. You got a preheater on here. This tank right here is a preheater. So the biggest thing that you're trying to do is keep this at a boil. And if you're boiling, you're evaporating. If you're not boiling, and what happens when you put cold fluid in hot fluid, you drop the temperature, so you lose your boil. And if you're not boiling, then you're not evaporating. So you put your cold sap in this preheater tank, and then it's got a little tube that goes in. Once it's got up to a high, reasonably high temperature, that's pretty warm, then you introduce it in, and then you don't lose your boil, and you're just kind of dripping that in a little bit at a time. And that takes hours. That's the number one longest, most intensive labor part of your operation with maple. You're looking at the potential of $60 to $120 a gallon for finished syrup at the gallon size. So just like anything in a bigger container, it's less price. So when you get down into the small little, 4 8-ounce jars, you're making a lot more per ounce. So a lot of people want to sell them in smaller quantities in order to get that. But there's a lot of potential there. Something else that folks use in order to get that water out prior, using technology now, is reverse osmosis. So if you, they're very expensive. By the way, I've developed a DIY home style RO membranes that you can make use of to RO it. Typically ROs for commercial are thousands of dollars, and it's not productive or economical for the home scale small operation to get started in. It's very costly. But if you do this DIY system, and there's some videos out there on YouTube how to use these RO membranes and set up your own system. We do that, and you can get it down to about 8 to 12% before you even start cooking. And that's taking a lot of water off. Doesn't sound like much, but you've taken a lot of water off by doing that.
15 minutes warning.
Okay. So my least knowledgeable area that probably I've been doing the longest. So I'm not going to dazzle you with a whole bunch of stuff that I don't know, but mushrooms are another component of forest farming, and it's something that you can add in, grows naturally. And, you're looking here at a typical mushroom log stack where the logs have been drilled, and you might have 30 or 40 drill holes. Just depends on the size of your log in a given log. And ideally, you need to stack those up and get good aeration throughout a good part of the year, and then they'll trigger a flush by getting them wet. So it simulates a rain. Best way that I've found to do it is to take like a stock tank and soak these logs overnight and then restack them back up. And that kind of triggers that flush that then you'll get a good fruiting on it. So haven't done a whole lot on this yet, but that's my project for next year is to expand what we've done already. And this is kind of a typical mushroom stack. This is one that basically what I'm going to make use of. I've got good benches along my property, a lot of space to put this without interfering and driving down the logging roads. So it's a good spot. If you're on a hillside, guess what you do? You just stack an extra log on the lower side before you start and then run. So, now you can adjust for your angle of slope. So there's a wide variety of prices in mushrooms, and it just depends on your market. It depends on the type. I've been learning a tremendous amount from Jack's recent episodes on mushroom, although it hasn't really covered the logs and drilling so much, but because he doesn't do it. Yeah. Do what works in your area. This works, in a good forested area. So I'm attracted to this, and certainly something that you can do in a shady area. This isn't limited to Appalachia where some of the other plants might be. This is pretty much anywhere where you got a good using the shade. So now some of the markets that you're looking for, you can either direct market to people that you know, and I know a lot of people in this community are good at that. That tell your story, directly to people. When you're looking at some of the roots and the medicinal stuff, you're probably not going to do a lot of that. That's most of our marks, particularly with the ginseng. That's the big daddy that everybody is interested in. We don't have a high demand here in the United States, but there is overseas. And you're looking at channels to have to go through because of the control that's in. Making medicinals, and I got a good friend who does the whole gamut of from growing to buying from others to making the medicines to marketing it both directly and wholesale. So you can go to somebody like him, and there's other people in the community of the Appalachian Forest Farmer Coalition is one of the big communities, and you can get connected with buyers groups there and get your product in. Or because it's limited on some of these others, guess what? There's an opportunity knocking for some of y'all that might want to fill that niche. So a lot of people want to get into the growing. They don't want to get into the making or the marketing or the distribution part of it. So there might be some opportunity there, whether you want to do it all yourself. That's a hard thing to do. Or if you want to be that middleman person, you don't have the ground, but you're knowledgeable enough about this and you want the medicinal value to it, then there's some opportunity for you. Some other places to learn more is there's a place called U Mountain Center in West Virginia and United Plant Savers in Southern Ohio. They have on-site workshops that they do at least once a year. There's other places around the country that you might find in your areas. I know there's one in Tennessee. Can't remember the town, but I think it's near Johnson City, if I remember right. Not in Johnson City, but near there, near the North Carolina border, and a few other places. North Carolina, there's one. Virginia, there's one. So there's places around the country that, they're demonstration sites, and you can go see for real what that is. We have people at the Southern Ohio one that comes from California every year. We had a couple who came from Hawaii. I think they were the furthest ones away. And we had a guy that came from England. So I don't know if it was the Hawaii or the England one, but I think the Hawaii one won. So, you can go to these and learn more. There's a university in West Virginia, particular called Future Generations University, and they do a lot of maple research. So you can go online to their site, look at their YouTube videos, sign up for their workshops, and they have a lot of information. And I mentioned earlier the Appalachian Forest Farming Coalition. They're just a group of farmers who share their information with each other. Is that the Sergeant Major stomp?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. She's time Nazi.
Okay.
I just couldn't get it to lock.
It's got 7.5 minutes.
Okay. So with that, get out there and farm the forest. take advantage of the opportunity that you all have. And what questions do you have that Alan can answer?
Into the mic, please. Into the mic.
I knew Jake was coming with one.
So on ginseng, you say the earlier you are, the more you get. What is the delta between when you can start doing it and when the market's flooded? How often do you check your ginseng and to get an indication? Is it just based on chance that you get out there? Oh wow, it's already up. How do you keep up with that?
Yeah, so
I got
just
a
like that's a good question. So a lot of folks who do this regular foraging is the bigger side of it. A lot of people go out foraging. They know where their patches are generally, and they start looking around just like deer hunters. This is a lot like game. So deer hunters start looking at trails and signs and all early in the season where are these deer running. And so a lot of hunters will go out, where are the ginseng patches and is stuff coming up and is it there? And so they know where they're going to go back to later. In the case of forest farmers, you know where it's at. It's here, and you just as often as you want. You want to go out every day. You're not going to see much change every day.
Okay.
You go out once a week, you'll see a little bit of a change. I'll go. Oh no. Oh yeah, multiple times per year. So I'm out there working mine. Number one, I'm doing the planting. So I dig up a batch, I change out my rhizomes, and then I replant. Now that's with yellow root particular. Ginseng, I'm not digging those up and replanting, but so I'm trying to extend my beds instead of selling the product right off. Then I want to grow more beds in the case of my yellow root. So I'm out there early in the year planting and replanting and so forth. And then in the middle of the summer, I'm looking it over. How is it growing? Do I need to do anything different? In my case, I need to get some fencing up. That's kind of my next stage. I didn't do that as my initial investment because it's kind of costly. So I'm going to do some inexpensive methods of fencing. But I'm out there several times a year myself. I'm the lazy farmer also, so I know other people who are out in their beds at least once a week. I don't necessarily do that unless I just want to go take a look.
So by annual, I meant like when you plant your initial rhizome, how long before that root is mature enough to harvest?
Okay. Yeah, I got you with the question. So that depends on the particular plant. So if you're looking at ginseng, when you initially plant that seed, you're looking at probably 7 or plus years to harvest for that. So you're just looking at it, looking it over. And then with yellow root, you're looking at about 3 years really before you get a good harvest. There's things you can do to harvest early, but you're robbing yourself at that point because it hasn't had a chance to really mature. So other plants you can probably get in a year or 2 years, but
On maple syrup, is it similar to honey, like it'll crystallize, and can you warm it back up and make it more of a liquid?
that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that.
Well, this is the reason
It
I'm
will
asking.
crystallize, but I don't know about.
Well,
reheating.
you're worried about scorching it, but I'm wondering if you could freeze dry it. You would take the moisture out, but you'd have to rehydrate it, but it might be a faster overall and more
Yep.
accurate way to do it.
Let's
But it
work
is
on that.
sugar in your freeze dryer. And we know what happens to sugar in the freeze dryer.
Hey, Roy. So I'm assuming that when you're first establishing the forest plants, you got to irrigate, right, till they get established.
That's a good idea too. I don't.
Oh, okay.
Most
that was my
people
question.
don't, but
Okay, then that was the second part was how do you irrigate all the way in the forest, but then you don't. Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So again, I'm the lazy farmer, and I'm making use of that natural environment that has moisture already in a somewhat dark woods. It doesn't evaporate like it does out in the field. Out in the field, we get big cracks that I can stick my hands down in those cracks sometimes. But in the woods, that's not the case. There's good deep soil and a lot of natural moisture, even in the dry part of the year. So it holds enough moisture in. And I take some losses in my case, but that's just part of it.
Well, you're also growing plants that you chose because they already grow natively in your forest, and you're expanding production basically of what's already there,
Correct.
which means probably the rainfall has been dialed in for those plants.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
all of the plants that I have, by the way, were already on my place. I've just expanded because I didn't want one plant here and there and scattered around. So I chose to make some beds in the woods and go to the places, to harvest those things. So, but it's in the same perfect environment that it would grow already. Did that answer your question? Or if you wanted to irrigate, you could. I'm a fan of Mark Shepard's Stun, Sheer Total Utter Neglect. And I neglect, and I'll baby it a little bit to get started, but I'm not babying it very long. If you don't make it, then tough, you're done.
I had a plan for you, and it was to not live.
You can kill a lot of plants with the stun method. Ask me how I know. Okay, we're done for today. So I just want, not today, for this. That's I'm out. Anyway, we're done. Roy, thank you so much. You guys can really see how you can tap into a resource on your property and expand that. How does that add to your personal sovereignty, even if you are working a full-time job? Right? Okay, back in 15.